Good afternoon, everyone, for joining us in today's webinar. We are honored to organize this webinar with our partners from Turkish think tank BİLGESAM. And we are honored and pleased to welcome Professor Filiz Katmanının as our guest speaker. Professor Filiz Katmanının has a diverse background. She's a specialist in international security, terrorism, and energy security. Professor Filiz Katmanının has written her PhD thesis on the politicization of the Hamas organization in Palestine. She is an expert also in BBC World News. Professor Filiz Katmanının is currently teaching at Istanbul Aydın University, and she has written and published various articles, research papers in well-known journals and magazines around the world. And Professor Filiz Katmanının, first please let me thank you for agreeing to join us in today's webinar. And now the floor is yours, and I'm sure the webinar will be very interesting for our students.
Thank you very much. It is my honor to be together again with our dearest Azerbaijani brothers and sisters. I have been to Azerbaijan for several times, and I have many other Azerbaijani students. Thank you very much, first of all, to your organization and also BİLGESAM, Elnur Ismailov, for inviting me and giving me opportunity to get together again and get new Azerbaijani friends. Today, we will talk about international geopolitics of energy with regard to renewable energy resources mainly. So in order to do that, we will try to have a kind of information regarding what is energy, what are energy resources, what makes renewable energy resources different from other kind of resources, and we'll also talk about geopolitics. What does geopolitics mean and how those two things interact? And finally, we will give some charts regarding the latest developments with regard to how renewable energy resources are rising rapidly like a rocket in energy era. I think it is ready right now. Let me share it with you if I can. This is the first time that I will be sharing something with this platform. I think I found it. Okay, is it appearing in the system? Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this is the flow of the chart. Please don't hesitate to type your question to the chat section, or you can also leave time when the presentation is over. But if you would like to raise a question, please use chat part here. When we talk about energy, there's a kind of different mentality with regard to what is the meaning of energy. The very simple way to say the definition of energy is ability to act. So if we consider this definition, it gives a kind of insight with regard to why energy is so important. With regard to our area, international relations, it's a kind of resource that we use to provide light, heat, or cold, or work the machines. So with me, in that regard, energy is in every piece of life we live in. So without energy, neither our body nor our life can sustain. So based on that definition, the security of energy is so important. Let me give a kind of breakthrough here. Why we study energy security, why we discuss energy issues in international politics. This is a kind of interdependence. What does that mean? National security, we all know, is the security of the nation state. The border security in general means. But this is a kind of conventional perspective. The contemporary perception relies on the fact that it is more than that. National security is not only border security of the state. It deals with different dimensions. We have a leading scholars here, Beri Buzan, Yaptawilt, and there is one more. I'm sorry, I always forget his name, despite the fact that I met all these three leading scholars in security studies. They call that this is a kind of contemporary and a kind of multidisciplinary approach to security studies. They say that there are sectors of security, which means that it is not only nation security, border security, but we should talk about economic security, environmental security, social security, cultural security, and also energy security. Why energy security is important? Because if we would like to secure a state, we should also talk about economy. And when we say economy, as you see on the slide, we need energy in order to run the machines in the factories. Not only for running the machines in the factories, but transportation, heating, cooling in the houses, lighting. These are very important for the overall security of the state. Thus, economic security influences national security, and economic security is very much dependent on energy security. Because as you know from economics, this is 101 economics, there are five factors of production. In order to produce something, you need 5 things, and one of them is energy, which is needed in order to work the machines in the factories. So energy security is an indispensable component of national security. And here, when we say security, we mean that there is no danger, there is no threat, there is nothing that we fear from. So if we would like to provide energy security, we should also consider that we are not scared. We are not kind of feeling danger or feeling threatened by the loss of energy. So in general, when we say energy security, we mean that every day we have available and sufficient and interrupted amount of energy resources needed daily for heating, lighting, work machines for an affordable price. So these are the components of energy security, and if one is missing, there is a problem. And we all know that energy resources are not distributed evenly, fairly. There are some countries who are rich in terms of energy resources. There are some countries who are poor in terms of energy security. And as you know, if energy security is related to economy, there is also supply and demand side, because energy resources, each individual energy resources are also products. For each product, there is supply and demand. So when we say energy security, there are 2 components. One is security of supply, and the other one is security of demand. So there's a kind of dilemma here, a kind of dilemma. Why? Because when we say security of supply, these are the countries who are demanding energy. So the countries like Turkey, who do not have sufficient amount of energy resources needed for daily uses, they should consider security of supply most. Why? Because every day, countries like Turkey should determine, should provide enough amount of energy resources in an uninterrupted way for an affordable price. So they try to secure the supply. For Turkey, security of supply is primary. But countries like Azerbaijan, they should consider security of demand most. Why? Because they sell energy. Oil, gas, they sell it. So the countries who are the supplier countries, who are the producer countries, they try to secure the demand for energy. Why it is important? Because COVID-19 is a breakthrough with regard to energy. Why? That it was a kind of legendary moment that the price for oil was minus, which means that the producers were providing money to the buyers in order to sell their product. This was the moment that created a kind of breakthrough in the history of energy business. When we consider these two aspects, security of energy and with regard to supply and demand side, as we said already, some countries are rich in terms of energy resources, some countries are not. So here comes the geopolitics. Again, let's give the definition. Geopolitics is a combination of geology and politics. What does that mean? If your country is mountainous, if your country is rich in terms of sun, if your country is rich in terms of amount of rivers, if you have enough amount of irrigable land for agriculture, these are the impacts of geology of your country on your politics. For example, Istanbul is very important because Istanbul and also Çanakkale, they host the very important choke points of international trade, Dardanelles and Bosphorus. So the geology of your national borders have both positive and negative impacts on your political affairs. So what is energy? There is a kind of how can I say, misleading information with regard to types of energy and resources of energy. Types of energy, as you see, a kind of physics point. Thermal, electromagnetic, electrical, chemical, nuclear, and mechanical. What we focus on is the energy resources, sources of energy. And as you see, we have one. And when we name them, there are different names. Renewable and non-renewable are the most famous one right now. But we say non-renewable energy resources as hydrocarbons. Why? Because with regard to chemistry, they have hydrogen atoms and carbon atoms inside. Why we say non-renewable to them? Because those hydrocarbon resources have limited reserve capacity. I will show how they are collected so you can understand why there is a limited capacity with regard to hydrocarbon resources. We also call them as conventional energy resources because they are old. What about the new fashion, which is the topic of today? Renewable. Dear friends, never memorize something. Always analyze the word you see, you hear. Here you see renew. When we try to analyze the word we see, it means that there is something new and it can be regenerated, which means that these resources are limitless. There is no limit. Despite the fact that you consume, it can regenerate itself. You don't need to do something. But with regard to coal, oil, gas, nuclear, the ingredients of coal, oil, gas, and nuclear hydrocarbons take too much time to regenerate itself, like centuries, because they are made of fossils. This is another terminology that we use for non-renewable, conventional hydrocarbon resources. Fossil fuels. Fossil means all the dead bodies of biological components and also animals. They age underground and there's a chemical reaction, and as a result of that chemical reaction, hydrocarbon atoms generate three forms of non-renewable energy resources. Coal is in the solid form, oil is in the liquid form, and gas in the gas form, like in the nuclear energy. So when we say renewable energy resources, those resources are generated, regenerated over and over again by the nature itself. We don't need to do something. And it takes very little time. For example, if you have a solar panel on your house, on top of your house, you consume energy, right? But the capacity of sun never goes off. It regenerates itself and you don't need to do anything. That is the reason why we say renewable energy resources. And when we say renewable energy resources, this is the importance, dear friends. We call it as a kind of revolution, because this era will open a new phase in there's a kind of phone ringing. Okay, so with regard to renewable energy resources, as I have said, there is a revolution rising. What kind of revolution? All the connection I have already made with regard to energy security, economic security, national security, and geopolitics is going to go away. But there is no 100% possibility here. But the geopolitics of energy is in the brink of a revolution. Why? As I have explained already, these energy resources can generate itself with a very short period of time in comparison to non-renewable energy resources. So all the conflicts, all the wars that are located around the control of hydrocarbon resources, coal, oil, and gas, will no longer be important. Why? Because solar is everywhere, wind is provided by nature. If you have enough rivers, you can generate hydroelectricity. Tidal energy resource is a kind of waves in the oceans, in the seas. Geothermal, which is underground biomass with regard to biological components, which means that in each country there are capacities for these renewable energy resources. At least sun is everywhere. The wind capacity, hydro capacity, tidal capacity, geothermal capacity, biomass capacity may differ, but with regard to sun, it is everywhere. So this is the reason why we say that renewable will bring a new revolution in the human history. We have agricultural revolution, we had the industrial revolution. Lately, we call it as information, digital revolution, but all of these revolutions are based on transformation of energy resources. The coal created industrial revolution, the animal power created agricultural revolution, the digital revolution is created mainly by the beginning of renewable energy resources. And maybe you are witnessing with the latest discussions with regard to digital coins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, so on and so forth. And there are many countries who are providing some kind of preventive measures, because in order to generate those digital coins, you should use enormous amount of energy. So that is the reason why we say that energy is very important, and renewables will create a new revolution in human history. So these are the geopolitical theories, but I will go over them in a very simple way. The most famous one is Mackinder. I think you have heard him before, heartland theory. And when we categorize the geopolitical theoreticians, Second World War is the milestone. The ones who are before Second World War are classical ones. The ones who are after Second World War are called as contemporary ones. And with regard to contemporary political theoretician, we have famous Brzezinski, we have famous Wallerstein. Why they are important? Because each of these scholars mention about the role of geology on international and national politics. The classical geopolitical theoretician Ratzel, he is German and he's a geographer, and he considered the German territory, which is a kind of landlocked country. So in his era, 1844 to 1904, this is the era that he lived in. In his era, there was a kind of colonialism, but Germany had limited capacity to go overseas. So he created a theory based on the surrounding area of Germany. Lebensraum, this is German terminology, which means living space. All the countries around Germany is the living space, backyard for Germany, according to Ratzel. So that's why both First and Second World War Germany tried to go towards the living space around it. Mahan is back in the game again. He's American, he's an officer. You know, America is surrounded by two oceans. That's why American geopolitical theoretician is very much focused on sea power. And this era, 21st century, will be the return of the sea power, dear friends. Please look at Eastern Mediterranean Sea problems, Red Sea problems, Chinese Sea problems, Indian Sea problems. These are very important. Black Sea, which is next to us, the recent tension between British, American, Russian soldiers and navies. Sea power is back in the game, dear friends. And Mackinder, as I had already, he's English, he's geographer, and he, based on the English hegemony in his era, he developed heartland theory, and he argues that Eurasia, Europe plus Asia, is the heart of the world. So if you would like to control the world, you should control Europe and Asia first. According to Mahan, if you would like to control the world politics, you should control the sea power. According to Ratzel, if you would like to control the world, Germany should control the living space around Germany. And Spikeman, he is a kind of further analyst on Mackinder's heartland theory, and he argues that Rimland, which is surrounding Europe and Asia, is the main focus for the countries who would like to control world politics. And with regard to contemporary geopolitical theoreticians, Brzezinski, we have Great Transformation and Grand Chessboard books. I highly recommend you to read both of them. He argues with regard to what Mackinder says, heartland theory, but he makes that proposition for America, for the West, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And he says that if the West would like to transform former Soviet Union territories, they should definitely have a kind of a three-phase, which is based on 5-year plan for the transformation of former Soviet Union territories, mainly the territories which are located in the Europe and Asia, Eurasia, like mentioned by Mackinder. And Wallerstein says that the world is divided into countries which is based on economy. Some countries are raw material producers. They are underdeveloped. They are periphery countries. Some countries are rich countries. They are developed countries, but they do not have raw materials, but they have capital, they have technology. But what is lacking in there? They lack cheap and qualified workforce. So center countries, developed countries bring raw materials from periphery to the middle countries like Turkey, semi-periphery countries, where the qualified workforce work for comparatively less salary in comparison to developed countries. Then they bring all the semi-finished product to the center countries, and they put technology and they export to semi-periphery and periphery countries for higher prices. Why did we discuss about these geopolitical theoreticians? Because, as I have mentioned, the era was controlling the hydrocarbon resources formerly, but now the entire game will change. We have a mentality here, great game, I think you have heard about it. It's a kind of mentality to control oil, gas, and coal reserves, but it is transformed as new great game. The players are different. It is no longer British Empire, but it is now a United States of America who tries to control. These are the pictures of those scholars. You can find some interviews with Brzezinski and Wallerstein. I highly recommend them. We also newcomer, which is Francis Fukuyama, who discussed about the role of geopolitics. I think you remember him with regard to end of history article. Then when he failed to prove his theory, he moved into geopolitics, and recently he published a book, a kind of article on the impact of COVID-19 virus on geopolitics in that manner. So this is Heartland, as you see, and this is Rimland. The blue area is referred as the Rimland, argued by Spikeman. These are the phases I have mentioned with regard to transformation of former Soviet Union republics. You can find this information at Great Transformation article published by Brzezinski at National Interest Journal. Okay, so let's come to the energy. Let me say what I should say at last in the very beginning. This era, dear friends, will be the era of, how can I say, kingdom of sun. And mentioned by Fatih Birol, who is the director of International Energy Agency, he says that the king of energy is solar. What does that mean? As you see, these are the eras that the transformation has been taking place since the First World War. And as you see, as the time goes by, first of all, the amount of coal gets very less. Then it is replaced with oil in 1970s. And 1970s, we have this famous oil shock with the Iranian revolution. Then when we come to 2000s, there's a new energy resource gaining ground from oil and coal, which is natural gas. So We can say that 1920s was the era of coal. 1950s, 1970s was the era of oil. But when it comes to 2000s, it was the era of natural gas. But with the 2020s, those hydrocarbons, fossil fuels, are outdated. With which they are replaced? With modern renewables. As we can say, since they can regenerate itself, there is a very big demand in comparison to demand for hydrocarbons. But is everything bright for renewables? No, it is not, because for renewable energy resources, the very important component is the price. Formerly, in the 2010s, we were discussing about how it is expensive to generate solar energy due to the fact that solar panels are so expensive. Again, we have China, who intervened into this problem, and they produced very cheap solar panels. It was not enough. They also produced it with a very efficient way. So the new solar panels are not expensive, and when we use them, it is more efficient way to generate solar energy on your rooftop. So this new era will definitely be focused on where the renewable energy resources are located. I will come to there later, and I will ask this question to you in order to make an exercise. But let's go over some recent factors who are affecting the energy revolution. It was not only renewables, dear friends, who created a kind of paradigm shift, but we also have shale gas. I think you all heard about it. What does shale gas mean, dear friends? Let me tell you in a very simple way. There are rocks. We know that the rocks, right? Inside the rocks, there is a natural gas. But it is hard to take that natural gas inside the rock and to use it. It was very expensive. You need technology, and you also have risk to contaminate waters, underground waters. But United States of America changed its entire energy story with innovation they made on shale gas. They invented a method, a technology. When they successfully take the natural gas inside the rock, United States no longer became energy importer, but United States became net energy exporter. United States began to sell energy to other countries, and recently they replaced Russia in natural gas, and they replaced Saudi Arabia in oil. They became the number one. What does that mean? How should we connect this information with regard to economic security of United States of America, national security of United States of America? So simple. As we said, the current conflicts, the ongoing conflicts, and the wars in the world history were mainly affected by the efforts to control hydrocarbon resources. Where were they located? Middle East, Central Asia, Russia. These were the countries, North Africa, these were the countries where coal, oil, and gas were mainly located. So the countries who needed energy, Western countries, developed countries who needed energy, who tried to secure the security of supply of their countries, tried to control these hydrocarbon resources. So we have ongoing conflicts in Africa, North Africa, Middle East, Central Asia, and northern part of Europe. But if these renewable energy resources and shale gas replace the hydrocarbons, what will happen? So simple. We have heard during Obama era that United States will no longer be in the Middle East. It's only due to the reason that they do not want to let any more American soldiers in Middle East. That was the explanation made by a former American president. No, dear friends, always look at from different angles. That I call it as sectors. Please look at from economic aspect. Please look at from sociological aspect. Please look at from political aspect, and please also look at from energy aspect. With regard to energy aspect, since United States of America was self-sufficient with regard to energy resources, why should they pay money for affairs in the Middle East? It was nonsense. And you know, in United States of America, every penny the taxpayer pays, they ask the price. They say that, where did you spend it? So in order to be accountable, there was no legitimate ground for American politicians to stay in the Middle East. Comparatively less, not totally, okay? With the shale gas, this is the impact of shale gas on American foreign policy, dear friends. America became a net exporter country. They replaced the leading producers of hydrocarbons. And with regard to show the difference, the change in global oil and electricity consumption, as you see, it is no longer the same. In the 20 years, this is the change. What will be the next 20 years? It will be much more devastating, dear friends. So what will happen to the countries, oil producer countries, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iran? What will happen to them? Do not consider that it will happen overnight. No, it will take time. There is a gradual decrease. Why? Because it is mainly economics, dear friends. If you have a resource, you use it until there is no reserve capacity. So there will be a gradual decrease. But what was surprising most? COVID-19. COVID-19 virus changed the entire expectation, entire prospects, predictions with regard to future of energy. There was a kind of immediate decrease in the demand for oil, which was a shock. As I have mentioned in the beginning, there was minus prices. The stockers were giving money to the buyers to take the oil from their stocks. That is the reason that we should consider. So what will be the next 20 years? This will be the change, dear friends. You see, let me show it again. It was almost 1 million tons of oil consumption in the 2028 period. It will be almost half of it for the next 20 years. And as I have said, with COVID-19, this dimension happened all of a sudden, overnight, almost overnight. So where we should focus on? This is another change, dear friends. If you would like to discuss, if you would like to study something which is in the future, please study Asia Pacific region, dear friends, because future is in Asia Pacific region, not in the West. Not anymore, dear friends. Why? The population rise, economic development, and demand for energy will mainly generated from China, India, and Southeast Asia. What does that mean? All the struggles will definitely be around Chinese politics, Indian politics, and Southeast Asian politics. Why? As you see, China is a giant energy consumer. Okay, here is the next question. Does China have enough energy resources? The answer is no. What about India? Do they have enough energy resources? The answer is again no. What about Southeast Asian countries? Again, no. Where do they generate their energy right now? Middle East. But they also have some resources like coal resources. Let me tell you one more thing. If you consume hydrocarbon energy resources, you pollute the air. If you pollute the air, if you give carbon dioxide emissions to the air, you contribute to the global climate change. So consider if China and India prefer to use coal for energy resources, how global climate change become? How the pollution, I think you have seen it from the on the TV screens that in winter you cannot see air because of the pollution in Beijing. That is the case with regard to Indian cities as well. But here is the case that in future it is expected that all of the energy resources will mainly demanded by China, India, and Southeast Asian countries. Is it all? No. You should also discuss about Africa here. Why? Because if we consider the geographical location of Africa, they are very rich in terms of renewable energy capacity, especially solar capacity. But here, there's a dilemma. What kind of dilemma it is? They don't have money, they don't have technology. Moreover, the number of electricity users is so little, which means that in future, it is expected that the demand for electricity will definitely come from African territories. There is a population. You see, China is number 1, India is number 2, Africa, China is number 3, India is expected to be number 2, Africa is expected to be number 1. So why we use population here? Because population leads to demand. What kind of demand? Oil demand, natural gas demand, and renewable demand. So Africa in future will be the key player with regard to renewable energy resources. So please look at the role of China, the Chinese companies in Africa. Why they are in Africa? This is the answer, dear friends. Why they are in Africa? Because the oil and gas that they generate from Middle East will no longer be needed. So what it will be needed? They will need renewable capacity. So they are in African territory. I have mentioned it earlier. I said that solar is the king. Another terminology we use is the solar is the star. Why? You see the sharp rise in the graph? This is solar panels, dear friends. It is more than expected. And let me tell you, with COVID-19, it is more than you can imagine. Because what COVID-19 underlined is that you should be self-sufficient. Remember, dear friends, in European countries, there's a European Union, but they took over the hygiene products of the neighboring European country. France did not give the hygiene product that Italy buys. boat. So you are all alone, despite the fact that you are a member of the European Union. In emergency cases, you are all alone. What energy resources, especially solar energy, provide? Independence. Why independence is important? Look at the United States of America. America is independent with regard to energy. They are not dependent on Middle East energy resources anymore. So if a country would like to be independent, first, they should focus on domestic energy resources. And we know that hydrocarbons is very much dependent on which location you are located. You cannot take your country and move your country to another territory. So geography is your destiny, a famous Ibn Khaldun quote. But with regard to solar, you can, with regard to renewables, you can become independent. At least you can decrease your dependence. This is what Turkey tries to do with regard to recent drilling facilities in Black Sea, in Mediterranean Sea, with regard to investments on solar power plants, hydro power plants, and nuclear power plants. Why? If you are dependent on energy from other countries, it means that you are not independent in your foreign policy, in your economic policy. So electricity will be definitely main determinant in the future of energy business. And as you see, this is the dimension. It is no longer Europe and US where the electricity will come from. China and India will definitely replace the demand for electricity. So there are different scenarios with regard to sustainable energy goals. Sustainability is important, which means uninterrupted. Here we have carbon dioxide emissions. Why renewables are rising? Another component is the fact that there is a global climate crisis, no longer global climate change. It is referred as a crisis now. Wow. Why? Because extreme weather events are rising. Drought is rising. We have very intense changes. All of a sudden, in winter, the heating reaches an amount which is unbelievable. Then in May, there's a snow. Yesterday, there was a kind of video from Germany that cars were underground because of the heavy rain. So why the importance is given on renewable energy? It is not because of independence. It is not because of domestic resource characteristics, but we have a universal human oriented carbon dioxide emissions problem. And if we do not focus on renewable energy resources, it means that some of the species will disappear, dear friends. It is expected that in 2050 there will be no more coffee. Can you imagine it? You won't be able to drink coffee, real coffee, I mean, not synthetic coffee, a real coffee. It is if we go on polluting the air with carbon dioxide emissions here. So several scenarios are worked. Let me say, as you see in the slide, these slides are provided by international energy agencies. So if you would like to work on energy, always refer to international energy resources. So let me end my presentation with this map. I personally drew the map. These are my own lines for a help to my professor. But these are the places where the former new grade game was played. But with the rise of renewable energy resources, the new dimension will be the areas like Africa, like the territories where the sun capacity is really rich. They will be the places for the geopolitical great aim. Thank you very much. Normally, I try to ask questions to my dearest friends, but I would like to make the presentation first this time. Now, floor is yours. I could not see your questions in the chat because I should move through the slides. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Professor, thank you very much for a very interesting, very comprehensive presentation. It's remarkable how you incorporated geopolitics, international relations, security, energy in one lecture, and you managed to deliver it in 50 minutes. It's remarkable. Thank you very much. And I received a couple of questions from our audience. Maybe I will ask one question which is delivered to me from our participants. Then we will ask participants to raise their hands if they have any questions. So the first question is that, Professor, you mentioned, you talked about interdependence between the energy security and foreign policy, and you mentioned that the countries which don't have sufficient energy resources, they cannot be considered as an independent when it comes to foreign policy. Do you think it is the case with China, with Turkey, and with other emerging powers which we are seeing nowadays?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And with regard to future of international relations, I think we should definitely pay more attention to where China is playing with whom China is trying to playing with. Let me give you one simple example. If you recall your memories with regard to the statements made by Chinese government with regard to what is going on in Syria. Have you heard anything? I don't remember anything. With regard to Somalia, have you seen any kind of Xi Jinping statement with regard to how terrible it is, so on and so forth? No, we have not. But recently, all of a sudden, they began to talk about and they began to send diplomats to Middle Eastern countries. And for the first time, they became vocal. They made statements. And you know what? There is a big criticism within the Chinese population, Chinese people. They say that, wait a minute, it is too early. Please look at the word here. It is too early. Why? Because if you remember Sun Tzu, the famous strategist, please be cool, please be patient. When you are fully ready, do not expose your aims. Because if you expose it too early, you will lose it eventually. Wait for the right moment. This was the criticism made by Chinese experts with regard to recent Xi Jinping's statement with regard to what is going on in the Middle East, in Iran. Why China and Iran recently had a very important agreement. Please look at the details of the agreement. It is not a simple agreement. They are creating the future, dear friends. Why? Because we have seen that the recent game played by the current players in the Eastern Mediterranean, in the Black Sea, in Suez Channel, it is very much related to One Belt, One Road initiative of China. Why China is trying to impose One Belt and One Road initiative? Again, for its own goals, for its own security. And definitely, energy is a very important component because China is and will be #1 energy demanding country. And in order to accomplish a more sustainable energy, how can I say, security, China should definitely make steps, baby steps now for 2040s, 2050s. You have seen the numbers. The demand will be enormous. Your mic, please. Your mic is still off, Elmir.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor. We have another question coming from Maria Adrian. She's saying, can the three main pillars or triangles of energy policy, including competitiveness, security of supply, sustainable development, can reshape the global politics in regarding of climate change and energy costs?
Definitely, there are many components, but with COVID-19, new components are added into this equation. So I'm really worried with regard to the recent studies handled in Antarctica, because they found new species who were buried under ice, but now they were not dead bodies, they were frozen. Now they are alive, they became alive. So we don't know what it will shape, how it will shape the future of energy. One more thing, as you mentioned, there's a kind of global climate change, and with regard to global climate change, ices are melting. When the ice is melted, we have a new sea route. Where this sea route goes through, let me show you with this slide again. You see, up in the Russian territory, China does not need to go through this channel anymore. China can go over Japan, over Russia, then to Europe. They don't need to go through Mediterranean. They don't need to pass through Suez Channel. We have this recent evergreen crisis. It was a kind of shock. And they tried to show that if you make this thing as a kind of trouble in order to stop China, okay, fine, we will go through this Antarctica way. In future, we don't know how it will be shaped, but definitely the components, the factors, the determinants that we know are less than the determinants that we are not aware of right now. Yesterday, there was a statement by US forces, and he said that we should be ready for the war in the space. Is it going to be the war between the nations on Earth, or does he try to give reference to the recent Pentagon report on aliens? We are not aware of it. We don't know. Maybe they know it, but as one of you, I have no information, verification with regard to what they know. So the future is a kind of wake, and energy future is definitely wake in that manner. Today I heard about a kind of startup who produces nuclear energy, dear friends, in a very small area. You don't need to make big investments. You don't need to spend too much money. It's a startup, and let me tell you, Jeff Bezos is investing money on this nuclear energy startup. So this is a kind of example that we don't know what the future will hold, because nuclear energy does not pollute the air, but there's a contamination problem with regard to chemical ingredients. But with regard to carbon dioxide, they are more neutral in comparison to hydrocarbons.
Thank you very much, Professor. I would like to ask the audience if anyone has a question. Because if you have any question, raise your hand. Otherwise, I would ask questions because okay. So the question I received from one of our students, Mr. Asim Aliyev, is that how critical is Malacca Strait and Hormuz Strait to energy security of Asian great powers or Asian regional powers?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for asking such a kind of to-the-point question, because due to time limit, I try to skip those points. We call them as choke points, and you are very right. These are the choke points that are very critical with regard to future of energy security, because they are very much close to India and China and Southeast Asian countries. And with regard to those straits, the neighboring countries to those straits are very critical, and there's a kind of game played in there. Recently, there were some crises in the Malacca Strait, Hormuz Strait, and it is with regard to preventing both the strengthening or enriching the countries in Iran, like Saudi Arabia, and as an indirect impact, they created those crises in those straits in order to negatively affect China as well. So when you look at those crises, please always try to look at from other angles. Please ask yourself this question: which country will benefit from this crisis? What will be the impact of this crisis on economy, on foreign trade, on energy, on environment, on sociology? And all of these components will provide you that the simple crisis is not simple anymore. And in future, as long as the reserve capacity of natural gas and oil and coal reserves stay for a certain period of time, it is expected to stay. These places, Suez Canal, Malacca Strait, Hormuz Strait, Bosphorus, Dardanelles, Gibraltar, these places will be very important. But if they see the Chinese countries like China see that they will be manipulated, then we will see that the new route go over Antarctica will gain a momentum against them.
Thank you very much, Professor. We have actually 2 questions left.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, thank you for your informative presentation. Yes, we should use renewable energy resources to reduce foreign dependency, especially if we speak on behalf of a country like Turkey. We do not have many non-renewable energy resources. And I want to ask this, how much of the energy consumed by Turkey is renewable energy right now, and when will Turkey go much further from the breach location on energy? And thanks in advance.
Okay, thank you very much. With regard to the use of renewable capacity, there was a recent statistics provided by international organizations showing that within Europe, Turkey is right after Italy with regard to renewable, the rise in the renewable capacity. And if we consider that Turkey has recently put the target of increasing the share of renewable energy resources in the overall energy basket, it was a very phenomenal statistics, I can say. And let me give you one more thing. With regard to Europe, Europe tries to determine the targets with regard to symbolic numbers like 20-20-20. Those 320s try to reflect that by 2020, European Union would like to give the share of renewable energy resources by 20%, and decrease the number of, how can I say, hydrocarbon resources by 20% and increase energy efficiency by 20% in 2020. They reached those targets and they updated the targets right now they call it as a Green Deal. And you know, Turkey is a candidate country. Despite the fact that energy is not the chapter that is open for negotiation between European Union and Turkey, but still these two actors should be prepared for harmonization of their policies with regard to energy as well. And European Green Deal is a very, very tough period, dear friends. Let me tell you one thing. The recent Yellow Vest movement, you all remember that, which happened in France and which was appearing in other European territories. You know why? Because according to European Green Deal, there should be new carbon tax imposed on taxpayers, and people do not have enough resources. And if there would be no COVID-19 viruses, it is expected that it would create a more unstable picture with regard to Europe. So since Turkey would like to become members, at least harmonize its policies, yes, there should be more attention on renewable energy resources. But according to the statistics, international statistics, Turkey has recently shown a very rapid rise with regard to use of renewable capacity. Is it sufficient? The answer is no, but comparatively, Turkey becomes right after Italy in the use of renewable capacity in its territories.
Professor, I have a follow-up question concerning what you discussed about the European Union. We know that European Union is over-reliant on energy imports coming from Russia, and very often, quite often, Russia is using energy as a political tool to have an impact on European Union's foreign policy. Do you think to what extent renewable energy can be sufficient for EU to gain its energy independence?
If I would be able to show another presentation, it would give more picture with regard to this question. If I may, let me try it. Maybe I can also show it to you. I don't know whether I can do it right now, because this is a kind of this one, I guess.
Whatever.
Sorry, that it comes. Can you see it right now? It is coming. Is it on your screen?
Yes, I see the map, still map on your screen.
Okay. This is with regard to your the Russian energy policy with regard to future. They call it as Energy Strategy 2030. They're aware that Europe tries to avoid Russian energy resources. And in Russian energy policy, it is called that Eastern Vector and Western Vector. And Western Vector is the European market. And they know that in future, it will be Asian, Asia-Pacific markets will demand the energy from the, how can I say, Russian territories. And they are aware of it. And they try to update their strategy with regard to 2030. So these are the numbers, dear friends. We have Nord Stream, and we have second Nord Stream 2. And let me tell you one thing, it is not only Europe-Russian relationship, but there is also America, who is also a very active player in European energy policy. Why? As I have mentioned, United States of America has become net energy exporter. Where do they export? Europe. They want to export liquid natural gas to Turkey, to Europe. So they don't want the construction of Nord Stream 2 coming from Russia to Germany. What did they do during Trump administration? Please remember, they threatened Germany to impose sanctions if they continue construction of the Nord Stream 2. but Germany resisted, and right now it is in the last phase of the construction of Nord Stream 2. But as you see, the numbers are decreasing, dear friends, and they know that Europe is not happy with regard to monopolization of its market by Russian gas, and moreover, they are unhappy with regard to controlled by Russian interests in their foreign policies. So they try to get rid of Russian dependence. We remember the Ukrainian gas crisis. It was the moment that they figured out that they should get rid of Russia immediately. And right after, what Europe did, they invested heavily on renewable energy resources. Denmark, wind capacity, Germany, they also invested on both solar panels and wind capacity, but I know that there are days that entire energy consumption was met by the renewable resources in the European countries. They try it, but they are not fully achieved it. But let me tell you, Russia is also aware of it. So what Russia did, Turk Stream project. It's a kind of bypassing Ukraine and trying to keep European market in its, how can I say, demand profile, that indirectly they try to sell their gas to Europe via Turkey.
Okay, thank you again, Professor, for a very comprehensive answer to our question. I have just one last question. As a student of geopolitics, your thoughts are very interesting for me. In some part of your presentation, you talked about Halford Mackinder, who is the father of the heartland theory, and then we talked about Eurasianism. As we know, currently, Alexander Dugin is considered as one of the leaders of the Eurasianism theories. Sometimes it's being referred as New Eurasianism. Do you think the ideas of Dugin is shaping in any way the foreign policies of states in Central Asia or in other Eurasian countries or even in post-Soviet countries? How much do you think Dugin has an influence with his Eurasianism ideas on the foreign policies or in internal policies of those regional countries?
Thank you, Elmir. I personally am very much interested in Dugin's work, and it is very interesting. And this is, I think, one problem with regard to literature. There is no enough reference to the sources made in Asian territories, and I try to avoid it in my lectures, especially in history of political thought. I try to give, how can I say, homeworks with regard to non-Western philosophers. And you are very right, with regard to Asian philosophers, we have very prominent names. But there's also a kind of a hegemony problem in the intellectual arena as well. So Dugin is very influential, but there are also some criticisms with regard to impact of Dugin in Russian circles. So, and since I do not have, I cannot read Russian, I cannot follow closely with regard to the debates and its Dugin's impact. But let me tell you, in the geopolitical studies, Dugin's work is very influential, especially it is translated in Turkish. That is why I had a chance to read it. But if we would like to understand Asia-Pacific century, my humble recommendation to our dear friends is to read Asian scholars, Dugin, Sun Tzu. We have many other names. We have Amitav Acharya, who is very important with regard to international relations, who used to be the head of International Studies Association. He's Indian. And we should definitely learn more about them, because according to statistics, again, the number of patents, the number of scientific studies are also rising in Asia, not in the West. So you are very right. Dugin is very influential, and he also shaped Russian foreign policy. If you would like to understand Russian foreign policy, Eurasian policy, Central Asian countries' policies, you should definitely read Dugin. I personally benefit from his works very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much for a very interesting, very comprehensive and fantastic presentation. And question and answer session was also great. I would like to thank you very much for your contribution. On behalf of Western Kaspi University, wholeheartedly, we are grateful to you for agreeing and for collaborating with us on delivering this webinar. I believe it was beneficial for all of our students, for our alumni. On the other hand, I would like to thank our partners, BİLGESAM, a great Turkish think tank. They also helped us to get in touch with you, Professor. And I hope in future we will organize more such kind of events, hopefully physically. I hope soon COVID-19 crisis will be over and we will be able to organize physical events, conferences, workshops, seminars for our students, and we will collaborate in different ways.
Yeah, it is also my honor again have opportunity to meet with dearest Azerbaijani friends. I think I have made new friends from Azerbaijan, and especially my mom. She does not like to visit non-Turkish speaking territories, so she wants to come to Baku. When the COVID-19 goes away, we definitely plan a visit, especially to see my friends. And maybe Elmir, we may have opportunity to organize something alive, not online. Please, you are more than welcome. My email is katman@aydin.edu.tr. You can always correspond with me. And if you come to Istanbul, don't hesitate to contact me. Right now, I'm not living in Istanbul, but if you come, don't hesitate. You can always reach me. Filiz Katie it's my Twitter and Instagram account. Feel free to add me. I would like to also add your accounts. I took some pictures, screenshots. I will also share them with you, despite the fact that not all pictures are available. I think it's the loading over internet. But it was great honor. I'm very happy to meet you with your wonderful organization at BİLGESAM.
It's mutual, Professor. Thank you very much. Whenever you come to Azerbaijan, just let us know. We will be very, very happy to host. We will be very happy to host you. And thank you once again. Thank you to our friends in BİLGESAM as well. So concerning the certificates, I would like to ask the participants if you are willing to receive a certificate, just please type your email address and your name and surname in chat box and we will get in touch with you. Once again, teşekkür ederiz Filiz Hanım. It was a pleasure.
Ben çok memnun oldum sizlerle birlikte olmaktan. Dilerim bundan sonra da dediğim gibi her fırsat ne sormak isterseniz veya tekrar konuşmak isterseniz mail atabilirsiniz veya
Teşekkürler. Mutlaka sizinle irtibat kuracağız.
Ben şu anda resimleri chatten paylaşmayı deneyeyim. Almak isteyen varsa sadece isimleriniz görünüyor ama tek Yadigar'la Elmir'in resmi görülüyor. Gönderebiliyor muyum?
Evet. Aldık, sizin e-mailinizi aldık. Teşekkür ederim.
Ayrıca teşekkür ediyorum. Şuradan bir bakayım. Tamam. Evet, buradaymış. Bulamıyorum şu anda. Resim gönderme şeyi vardı ama onu bulamıyorum nedense. Olmazsa
hocam e-maille bize atabilirsiniz. Yani bana atabilirsiniz. Ben buradan paylaşabilirim. Şimdi ben e-mailimi buraya yazacağım.
Tamam. Tamam. Çok teşekkür ediyorum.